Bienvenidos a Encuentros con el Futuro, parte del Congreso Futuro 2018. Y estamos aquí para tener una conversación con Callum Roberts y Alex Muñoz sobre la importancia de la preservación y conservación de los océanos y el rol que ha tenido nuestro país en ayudar, digamos, y ser de hecho uno de los pioneros en este movimiento. ¿Y por qué esto es importante y esencial para la preservación del planeta? Nuestros invitados son Alex Muñoz. Él es magíster de Derecho Internacional y comparado de la George Washington University y abogado de la Facultad de Derecho de la Universidad de Chile. Y durante 8 años fue el presidente para Latinoamérica, vicepresidente para Latinoamérica de Oceana, una ONG que desarrolló el Parque Marino Nazca Desventuradas. Él es además uno de los pioneros en nuestro país del tema, digamos, de la preservación oceánica y una persona que tuvo, como que fue muy influyente en el rol, digamos, de mantener buena parte de nuestro océano, una tremenda cantidad de millas marinas, como una área de preservación. Y también tenemos a Callum Roberts, profesor de conservación marina del Departamento de Medio Ambiente de la Universidad de York. Él es miembro de la Junta SeaWeb, Fauna y Flora International y Blue Marine Foundation y asesor del The Manta Trust. Él es autor de libros como Secrets of the Seas, A Journey into the Heart of the Oceans y Ocean of Life, How Our Seas Are Changing. Y nuevamente, digamos, él es también una persona que está viendo cuál puede ser el impacto de la pesca en la preservación de nuestros mares y en el futuro de nuestros océanos. Thank you very much. We're very honored to have you guys here. So first, I just want to start with just an open question. Chile has now like 29% of its waters separated from exploitation. And this was like a really big move and kind of put our country in this position of kind of one of the, I guess, a little bit of the vanguard, which we're not usually there, of preservation. If you could like tell us a little bit, you know, how you saw this process happening, because I understand that you were both in different ways involved in this, and why this is such an important thing to do.
Well, Alex has been more closely involved than I, but perhaps you could give us the background.
Yeah. Well, before Chile became a leader in marine conservation, Chile was a leader in marine depletion. and actually, even today, most of our marine resources are overfished. Every year, our Undersecretary of Fisheries assess the status of 25 different fisheries, and 9 of them are officially collapsed. Other 9 are overfished. And that doesn't speak very well of the way we have been managing our resources. And most recently, because of our President Bachelet's leadership and the collaboration with different local communities and of course scientists and NGOs where we participate, Chile has gone from almost 0% protected in 2010 to 29% of Chile's waters fully protected. That's an amazing achievement, but we have to be very clear that we're just catching up. We have a very serious problem with our oceans, and we have to adopt these drastic measures in order to try to recover those fisheries and protect the ecosystems that we have left.
For sure. And talking about that, yeah, okay. You know, you've had like a huge role influencing world opinion through your books and through your research about, you know, exactly what the impact of overfishing and sea depredation has.
That's right. And if you look back in history, we can see that overfishing is not a new problem for the world. It's just got more widespread, and the problems have become more severe. But if you look at the seas around the United Kingdom, where I'm from, as early as the 19th century, the beginning of the 19th century, we see the beginnings of the depletion of fish stocks. Records of how much fish were being taken from the sea began in the 1880s, and I did an analysis which looked at how much the fishery productivity had changed since then to the present day. And the amount of fish landed per unit of fishing power expended since the 1880s has fallen by 17 times. And what's incredible is that looking at the sailing fishing fleet of the 1880s, they were landing more fish than the modern sophisticated fishing fleet does today. This is a problem which has been repeated, though. Every place that people have started fishing, it's played out in the waters of Chile. As industrial fishing has spread, so you lose the big-bodied animals. They get depleted fastest. And then you're left with things that live fast and die young and can cope with this level of extraction. But that's not a healthy state for the ecosystem to be in. You need to have that diversity of animals in order to maintain the processes that keep the sea healthy, and those processes keep things healthy on land as well. So we've reached a point where hopefully the amount of impact that we're having on the oceans through overexploitation is bottoming out, and we're beginning to see us rebuilding from here on.
How do you change public opinion in this? Because one of the big problems is that you don't directly see this. I mean, we're really good at destroying things that we see already, but the sea just like in people's minds just seemed like something distant, and like things like the destruction of algae or the destruction of the sea soils is just something that people seem to be like unaware. What strategies do you guys see to kind of like build public opinion in order to enact change?
Well, first of all, I wonder whether we need to change everybody's minds. I don't think that's what we're trying to do. We do care about leaders. We care about the communities that are affected, and that share of the public opinion that could weigh into certain decisions. There's no single problem in the world where everybody agrees that's important. So that's not our ambition. So, but I think it's good that people have more information about the state of the ocean, the importance of the oceans, and how we are affecting that. Because if they change their practices, they could also promote certain solutions, and also with a very old but still very important practice, which is voting, you can actually affect the political agenda. At the end, we have a scientific assessment of all these things, but at the end of the day, the solution is political, and we have to influence our decision makers so they can change the patterns of the way we are treating the ocean.
I think as well, people have perceived the ocean to be limitless in the past. Apart from not being able to see what goes on underneath the surface, which is always a problem. Problems are out of sight, out of mind, and so we tend to ignore them. But the other thing that people do is they look at the ocean and they think this place is just too big for us to have any sort of impact on it, other than perhaps very local. So there's two fallacies of great ocean size. The first fallacy is that you can take anything you like from the sea and there will be no problems there. The second fallacy is that you can get rid of anything you don't want into the sea and there will be no comeback from that.
Like sharks, right?
We've been overfishing for a long time, and so now we're beginning to see the result of overexploitation, but we're also polluting the oceans at an incredible rate. And it's surprising, perhaps, that the problem of plastic pollution is only really coming up into public awareness now. But if you keep adding something which doesn't disappear to the oceans, eventually it's going to become very obvious. And I think we've reached that point. Public awareness is really suddenly, I think, increasing exponentially. We are getting a much more informed public who are beginning to realize that the sea is in trouble and that we need to do something about it.
Great. So if we don't do anything, which has been the policy for many places until now, where will we be in 30 years' time?
Well, maybe you can answer that.
Yes, well, I think one of the things is we're going to see a continuation of these kinds of changes. In some parts of the world, we can see the future today. So, for example, in Southeast Asia, we can see the end point of overfishing, and that is where bottom trawl fisheries, where you drag a net across the seabed, have shifted from big fish, abundant, high-value, predatory fish that people really enjoy eating. They've gradually fished down, so you're catching smaller-bodied, but still numerous fish. And now they've got to a point where they're fishing for anything, and nothing gets thrown away. Nothing is escaping. So effectively what is happening is that they're scraping the ocean for just protein, biomass, and oil. And it all gets put into great cooking vessels and turned into fish meal and oil to feed prawns and fish in aquaculture facilities. So we're destroying the wild environment to feed the fish farms that feed the supermarkets that we go to. And you could see that trend just continuing all over the world, in fact. But I never expected to see such a dramatic craziness of overfishing that's taking place in Southeast Asia. Now, when you do that, you get all sorts of other problems emerging, unexpected problems, some of them, but not if you're a biologist. You can trace the links. So one thing that happens when you start destroying the food webs of an ecosystem is you begin to get much more in the way of microbes in the water, and they can cause harmful algal blooms. So these are plankton which produce toxins. They're bad for human health as well as for the ocean environment. There's an excess of plankton growth in other places, which leads to the depletion of oxygen in the water, the formation of dead zones where you can't get anything from the sea. So there are places where you get things like green tides, where there's such an excess of nutrients and fertilizers in the ocean that you have seaweed this deep on the shore. And if you look at photographs of Chinese tourist resorts, for example, nobody can get in the water because this green stretches out hundreds of meters from the beach. And this is the kind of dysfunction that happens to the ocean when we overexploit it, when we damage it, when we don't respect it.
Thank you so much. We're going to continue talking about this, but we'll be back after a commercial break. Volvemos en unos minutos con Encuentros con el Futuro, parte del Congreso Futuro 2018. Hola, estamos aquí de vuelta con Encuentros con el Futuro, parte del Congreso Futuro 2018. Y estamos conversando sobre los océanos y la depredación de los océanos con Alex Muñoz y Callum Roberts. Thank you very much again for taking your time to be here with us. So we were talking about the consequences of depletion and the consequences of overexploitation of the seas. And well, right now we have big issues, with how this interacts with global warming, right? And particularly, some big powers and some big actors that shall remain unnamed are denying even the existence of global warming. I don't know what you guys can say about that, and just like in your specific area, how is this phenomenon also affecting and accelerating some of the processes of the trouble that we have with our seas?
Well, Chile, as in fisheries, we also had a very bad record on the way we produce energy. We're a small country, and our contribution to CO2 emissions in the world context is minimal. But every country has to compare with itself. I mean, we cannot wait to emit as much as China or the US to start caring about the issue. But the fact is that most of the energy that we produce was from burning coal, with coal-fired power plants that are all located in the coast, with severe or big CO2 emissions, but also mercury, or even using millions of liters of ocean water that is sucked into these plants, and it's warm, and then it's thrown back into the ocean at a high temperature. All of that hurts the ocean in a very bad way. And fortunately, we are, again, shifting from this dirty energy matrix to a major component of renewable energy. But this was very recent. Only 5 years ago, the case was that a few big companies dominated all the energy market, and the legislation was totally favorable to them, and there was almost no room for other actors from the renewable energy sector to come in and change this. So fortunately, because of the leadership of our president, we are experiencing some important changes, but there's already a lot of impact from the pollution from this coal burning, and which is particularly bad in the ocean.
Yes, I think global warming has shifted from being something that you could say was not happening 10 years, 20 years ago. You know, the people who denied global warming existed, you know, had some things to hold on to. But nowadays, the science has progressed so far, and the impact of global climate change has progressed so far that there's no longer any reasonable case to deny that it is happening. The scientific case is extremely strong. There are still some people who believe the Earth is flat, but that doesn't make it flat. Yeah. There are people now who deny global warming. They're just a tiny number of people. What is happening in the oceans with climate change is that the oceans are warming, and this is good for us in some ways, because since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the oceans have captured 93% of the extra heat that has been trapped on planet Earth. If they hadn't captured all of that heat, the temperature on Earth would have risen 36 degrees Celsius, not 1 degree Celsius. So there is this enormous planetary air conditioner in the oceans. But that has an impact on ocean life, and probably the most visible of those impacts is on tropical coral reefs, which are the richest of all shallow water ecosystems. They have an abundance of marine life, thousands of different species, beautiful colors. But across the world, they've been dying as a result of global warming. There's a lot of worry about, you know, what can we do to save coral reefs? And the answer is there are no quick fixes, there are no technical fixes available to save coral reefs. What you have to do is to tackle the cause of their problem, which is the heating of the planet. And that means cutting global greenhouse gas emissions urgently. So Chile is moving towards renewable energies in a very encouraging way, quite a rapid development, particularly solar energy, hydropower. So it is in the vanguard, I think, of this trend towards a new, more sustainable way of living on the planet.
Yeah. So if I may add something.
Yes, sure.
There are a number of studies that show that marine protected areas can make these marine ecosystems more resilient against global warming. While they're not totally protected from global warming, it has a better chance to adapt to this problem. And that was one of the considerations to create all these new marine parks in Chile. We are, as you know, we are adding 1 million square kilometers of ocean totally protected, and this factor and the relationship between protected areas and global warming was one of the keys to make that decision.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to move. We've both been big advocates of having protected zones, and that not only seems to have an impact on naturally on the rebirth of life in the oceans, but actually can even have, I understand, a positive impact to the actual industry that had been depredating them, right?
That's right. In fact, some of the earliest research on marine protected areas and their role in supporting fisheries was done in Chile, at Las Cruces on the coast. And one of your professors from Chile, Juan Carlos Castilla, is internationally very famous and highly respected scientist. He did these experiments where he showed that the marine life recovers very vigorously once you stop fishing an area, and that the benefits from that area spill over into the surrounding fisheries. So, you know, all the animals that are reaching bigger body sizes, breeding more vigorously, their offspring spread out and replenish the fishing zones. So there's actually a win-win here. You can protect nature and you can exploit it in the surrounding regions. The point that Alex was making about benefiting communities in terms of climate change resilience is partly dependent on keeping their industries and their economic activity going, even as conditions on the planet get more stressful for life in the sea.
Yeah, and I understand that actually we have an interesting case of communities protecting their own resources in Juan Fernandez, right? Where the fishing, I understand it, was it lobsters, right?
Lobster, yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about that? Because it's a really interesting case study.
Well, Juan Fernandez is this small archipelago 600 kilometers from the Chilean mainland. And they are really great because in the 1930s of the last century, they figured out that they needed some rules to keep fishing lobster forever. It's the first case that I know that a local community established like a management plan with very little advice. There was actually a Scottish person that was living there that told them, I mean, if you don't care about this, you're going to lose your food for tomorrow. So, and Juan Fernandez was so isolated that actually that meant something. I mean, if you don't care about the things that you have now, you may not have food the day after. So they introduced these rules that all of them are still valid. Like a minimum catch size limit, a season, they only fish for 8 months a year, and also the females with eggs, they throw them back into the ocean. That's an incredible case of fisheries management in the early days. And what was a survival strategy in the first place became quite an ethical position of the Juan Fernandez community. And now they don't want just to keep that, but actually they're advocating to protect most of their ocean. They were saying, I mean, we need just a few miles to keep fishing, but we want to close all the rest, not to help only ourselves, but actually to recover the fisheries in the mainland that are so depleted that you need our help. I mean, and that's an amazing thing to do. Instead of being like a greedy and fishing everything that you have, no, they were saying, we're going to keep this as a bank account and we all can extract the revenues from it.
So that's like a case study in positive things, but what happens with salmons, which is like a big industry around the world and huge here in Chile? And we haven't exactly been exemplary in that, particularly when it comes to antibiotics and dumping them in the sea, which is a huge problem, yes?
Well, when you keep fish in a very crowded condition in a cage, they get lots of diseases, and that means you have to use lots of antibiotic medicine to keep them healthy. Chile has seen the impact of salmon diseases sweeping through the aquaculture areas and causing lots of economic hardship. I think the problem with aquaculture, not just in Chile, but across the world, is that we haven't developed it very sensitively, not in an environmentally friendly way. For one thing, we catch wild fish and we feed them in large quantities to these farm fish, and that's still depleting the ocean. In another way, we're using chemicals. The fish produce lots of pollution. They're generally kept in sheltered areas of the ocean, which are enclosed waters, so the pollution builds up to harmful levels. Aquaculture, there's no doubt about it, is an industry for the present and the future. The aquaculture industry has exceeded the rate of human population growth in its productivity. So there is more fish per person on the planet today than there was 40 years ago, which is quite a dramatic change. But the way that aquaculture has developed up to now cannot be continued through to the middle of this century. We're going to have to get much better at producing fish for less environmental cost.
So we have about a minute left, and I would like to ask you to, I don't know, have final thoughts or maybe reflections for, all the people that are listening to this and, about maybe why this is such a pressing issue and what we can, and what are the steps to take in the near future?
Well, in anything in life, when you're about to losing it, you start caring about it. And yeah, we're losing our ocean. And my sense is that we cannot just try to fix the system. We have to change the system. We cannot keep fishing at this scale. We cannot get everybody happy with the decisions. Probably the industry will complain, and that's fine. They cannot keep fishing at that level, and we'll have to reduce the amount of fish we're taking out of the water, the way we're fishing. We cannot keep using things like bottom trawling. And as Callum was saying, we cannot keep even doing aquaculture in a way that is so not smart, to say in a way. Farm salmon is a fish that eats other fish, so we are actually not producing more food for the world, we're actually taking food from the world because we have to use our wild fish to feed this farm salmon in a ratio that is probably 2 to 1. So,
okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, Callum, I'm going to have to cut now, but you can see the talks of both Callum and Alex as part of the Congreso Futuro 2018. Thank you so much for coming here and for sharing this with us. Bueno, nos vemos en otra más de estos encuentros del futuro, parte del Congreso Futuro 2018.